From Tally to Cali,
It's time
to wake up.
Wake up!
Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
and this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by
Vitamin energy.
The vitamins.
The energy.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi.
and Corey Clark.
Wake up! It's Wake Up Warchant, presented by Vitamin Energy. Coming up on today's show, a cool half hour with your boy Corey Clark, talking all things Clemson with Tiger Illustrated's Larry Williams. Wake Up Warchant is presented in limited commercial interruption this week, everybody, courtesy of our awesome friends over at Vitamin Energy. VitaminEnergy.com. Shake it and take it. One little bottle, so many benefits like vitamins and nutrients. 260 milligrams of all-natural caffeine, no sugar. And by the way, those vitamins and nutrients, clinically tested, clinically proven to enhance your focus, your mood, etc., etc. Check it out, vitaminenergy.com, warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source. Cool thing now about being a member of warchant.com, not only the power of the On3 network, but also we got everybody from Rivals on board, like Larry Williams from Tiger Illustrated. He's been covering Clemson forever. So cool for him to be able to hop on and talk to Corey. I think we did this several years back when we were still on the Rivals Network. Corey and Larry got good rapport, so we'll give you folks a little bit of a break from hearing my voice. Although right now I'm probably enjoying maybe a Mai Tai right now. Probably mojito. Yeah, probably enjoying a mojito. Love you folks, though. Thinking about you. Can't wait to get back and one day closer to football season. Also, shout out to our great friends over at Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, cptallybar.com, the website. Don't forget, trivia going down Tuesdays, bingo night on Thursdays, every single day in between, daily lunch specials, as well as a happy hour from 4 to 7 p.m., Corner Pocket Bar and Grill. All right, I'm done talking. Let's hear Corey and Larry talk about maybe the presumptive ACC favorites heading into the season, the Clemson Tigers.
All right, Larry, so let's get going. You know, Florida State and Clemson are kind of, I don't know if tied arm in arm, but at least hand in hand or fingertip to fingertip with these lawsuits that tried to get out of the ACC, and then what happened a few months ago, where at least for Florida State fans' perspectives anyway, they're stuck for a couple more years. But I don't think it was the end of the world, because there does seem to be an exit ramp at some point by the end of the decade. What is the Clemson administration, fan base, coaches, how did they feel about the current conference talk in alignment?
Well, I think the biggest positive that most of them are recognizing, and I don't know if the Florida State bubble is recognizing it as much. I'm not criticizing or anything, but like for so long the big issue was the grant of rights. Shackles or the unknown, like just there was no number. Like
right.
You're having to do cloak and dagger lawyer trips to Greensboro and Charlotte, wherever the ACC offices were at the time, and you could only look at certain things. You couldn't take pictures, and the biggest here's the simplest terms that I've been able to put it in over the last year or two in terms of an analogy, and that is, are Clemson and Florida State trying to get out of the ACC? I mean, maybe, not necessarily. They just need to know how much. It's like a lien on a house, right? So whenever I would hear reports of, okay, the Clemson / Florida State / whoever, they're about to go to the Big Ten or the SEC, and this is pre-settlement, I'm like, how can they be about to do something when the conference they're allegedly about to go to has no idea how much they're worth, has no idea how much the house is worth, so to speak? And so to me, and I think to others up here, the lien on the house is gone. There is a value you can put on it because it's an established number. It's just the buyout. So basically the grant of rights is gone.
Right.
Which I think maybe another underplayed part of this story is, previous to the settlement, just if you're in the SEC's shoes or the Big Ten's shoes, just like talking, even back channel talks with prospective schools in the ACC, that's tortious interference.
Yeah.
And so that now, as far as I know, I mean, it seems it stands to reason that that's gone now. And so I just think it was a total game changer. Now, of course, the next question that has always been on everybody's minds is, all right, so when is Clemson going? When is Florida State going? Where are they going? I don't know. I think at the moment, the most important part of that, the settlement, is it gives you bigger shares of the pie.
Yeah.
Bigger potential shares of the pie based on your branding and performance and all that stuff, which is really, to Florida State's credit, they get a lot of flack from folks, including me, who, sort of accuse them of being the swashbuckling kind of saber rattlers, I guess. I'm sorry. That's the term.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, they deserve some credit because they had the guts to stand up and say, this isn't right. And they got exactly what they were standing up for.
Well, and Larry, you'll appreciate this, but, I go back. I wrote a column, I don't know, a year and a half ago. It was during when Florida State actually was good in 23. And I would go back and look at, like, the Boston College, Wake Forest, and you've been in this Clemson been in this conference for a long time. The YouTube video views for their condensed game, because the ACC does a good job with the condensed highlights of a football game. And I would go back and look at their view counts, and it was like 9,000 total for Boston College versus Wake Forest. Meanwhile, the Warchant rap that Ira and I do after a Florida State football game was getting 20,000 views. In the Florida State condensed game on the ACC network was getting hundreds of thousands of views. And it's crazy to me that they're getting Boston College and Wake Forest are getting the same piece of the pie as Florida State and Clemson, who are driving the eyeballs and are the marquee names. Now, it would have helped, obviously, if Florida State didn't fall flat on its effing face in 2024. But the point remains that when you're Florida State and Clemson and you're trying to compete with Florida and Texas and Oklahoma and Alabama, and you're getting paid like Boston College, it might be hard at the end of this decade to even be even competitive. And I think that was the worry that Florida State fans had. And I wanted to ask you, is it a worry that Clemson fans had? Because Clemson fans, I think, have a different perspective because y'all never did really – Florida. I don't say y'all like you're on the team, but Clemson, while it's taken a bit of a dip, has never fallen on its face in the last 10 or 12 years. They've still been one of the top, 5 or 7 programs in the country. But I wondered, as they viewed the landscape of college football and the fact that Ole Miss and Mississippi State were going to be getting $20 million per year more than them, if Clemson fans were worried about the future of their program in relation to the rest of the country, or the rest of the SEC and Big Ten, I should say.
Oh, that's been a long-held concern for Clemson fans dating back to, I know this seems like a long time ago. It is a long time ago, but it feels longer given how much change we've seen just in recent years. But circa 2010, 11, 12, that was the previous time that realignment Geddon was happening every summer. And back then, they were losing to South Carolina, Clemson was. 09, 10, 11. And the fear then was, oh, crap. Like, not only is the SEC getting all these new revenue streams from its from all the new the cable bundles and all that, this is going to allow South Carolina to lap us. That that was the sentiment among Clemson fans, or the fear. Yeah. Well, they more than survived that. They decided, okay, we don't need to go to the Big 12. We don't need to go anywhere else. Like, their view of it, that they decided administratively at the time, was with this current framework. And again, that was at that time. Like, if all we need to focus on is dominating the ACC and everything else will take care of itself, we can achieve all that we want to achieve. That was their resolution at the time. But closer to now, like, Corey, if we go even previous to the settlement, like, what was the the previous big issue that had to get sorted out, that Clemson and Florida State finally got the ACC to concede. That was the Success Initiative.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that, obviously Florida State, that wasn't really on the Seminoles on y'all's radar last year because you're
Right.
2-10. But I'm just going to frame it in Clemson's terms, just to sort of present the obvious gravity and how much it means. So when Clemson went to the playoff and national championship game in 15, 16, 19,
Yeah.
18, 19, sorry. I want to say their take from the ACC pie was like 400,000, 450 each of those years. I could be,
Yeah.
I'm just saying roughly that's accurate. Okay. It's like, when you look back at that, it's like, holy crap, that's all they got, And so the Success Initiative, what it meant for Clemson this past season when they got to the ACC championship game, sort of backdoored their way in thanks to Miami falling on its face, but then had to get a 56-yard bomb of a field goal. That field goal, that 56-yard field goal from a freshman kicker from Charlotte, was worth $4 million. They literally got a check for $4 million. That's what the playoff pays for qualifiers. And then, just hypothetically, had they beaten Texas, that's another $4 million. So I think, all told, if you get to the national championship game, that's $20 million you get from the playoff, I believe, not counting travel allowances and such. But Clemson got to keep every penny of that. And so that really puts it in the most easy to understand and high impact terms of what. But my point, Corey, is it took a year and a half for them to get that?
Yes.
The ACC dragging its feet. And if you told me that Clemson and Florida State took the step of suing the ACC just to get the ACC to really take them seriously and didn't really, have serious designs on leaving the conference, I'd believe some of it, because it's like previous behavior indicated that, man, it's just like pulling teeth to get the ACC to get on board with the idea, again, this idea that has been obvious to a lot of people for a long time, but not obvious to some in the ACC, that football is what drives the boat. That's what drives the revenues, not basketball.
And I think Clemson obviously lives that life. Florida State does. I don't know if we'd even say there's another football school in the conference. I know Virginia Tech cares, but they have been down essentially for 20 years. Miami, the same. And Miami's fan base isn't a great one. But, they are a name at least. And I think that's what was so frustrating in Tallahassee was people kept making fun more Florida State because they were much more I don't know, out in the open, public with their disdain for the ACC and sometimes to their detriment. And I don't think they handled everything flawlessly by any means. But people would make fun of Florida State and Clemson for wanting to get out or suing the conference. And it's but what do you want them to do? Do you want these are two fan bases that really, really care about this sport, and they're amongst people that don't. And they do view themselves more of SEC type, or we're around the SEC. They're SEC caliber programs. They've been two of the best programs. Clemson for the past 15 years. Florida State's dipped a lot longer, but from 1980 until now, they have the third most wins of any school in the country. These fan bases care a lot, and I didn't understand the vitriol that came towards Florida State about wanting better, wanting in Clemson too, They want to compete on a national level. With that said, moving on real quick, can Clemson win a national championship this year? I know they can get to a playoff. That's understandable because I think they're going to be better than they were last year. And last year they made the playoff. Do you think they're good enough to win a national championship?
Such an interesting question. And I was just on a podcast with Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman earlier this week for a podcast that will be published on July 1st, which is actually the official day that the On3 Rivals merger happens.
Yeah. Welcome aboard, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man, you're a teammate now.
Glad
Awesome.
to be aboard. And they asked the question, not exactly what yours was, but it gets me to your question. And they said, what, in Clemson fans' minds, what would qualify, what do they have to do for this season to qualify as a success? And I don't think it's fair to say win a national championship is that bar.
That's a tough bar.
I don't even think it's fair to say getting to the national championship is that bar. I think it's getting to the playoff, of course, and winning at least one game. I think otherwise, college football is so freaking unpredictable in this era of the more transactional era with the portal and all that. And B, just how hard it is now to advance through a playoff. You know, there's weird bounces, there's injuries. Injuries are more important than ever as you have to play more games. Like, you know, Ohio State, you know, they were being written off by everybody. Tennessee was taking over their stadium with 30,000 fans in orange, and it immediately can turn. You know, Texas was on the verge of losing to Arizona State in the second round. Penn State really outplayed Notre Dame in the first half of the semifinal. And then it just such narrow margins. And I don't think Georgia was as far away from Notre Dame as that score indicates. And so it's just hard to sit here and say, okay, this is what I think is going to happen. But can they win a national championship? I think they can contend for one. And I just think that this is like a stars aligning type season in terms of the talent that they were able to retain. And obviously retention is a huge part of the story now for teams everywhere, retention or lack thereof. And so they not only have a ton of experience coming back, but every important player that they needed to bring back and that could have gone to the NFL or could have gone to other teams for a lot of money chose to come back. And so I think the addition of Tom Allen was huge. I think, you know, the Wes Goodwin experiment, sort of you saw the cracks in that just because he wasn't that type of commanding leader that you needed, that, you know, to inspire confidence, not just in players, but your assistant coaches as well. That command. I think Tom Allen has that. I think that really the most frequent thing you hear about him is that it's like you have another head coach on the field. And of course he was a head coach before. So I think it's realistic to say they are a championship contender. But man, it's hard. It's hard to win it all.
I wanted to ask you about this. Look, when Deshaun burst onto the scene, it was obvious. When Trevor Lawrence burst onto the scene, yeah, man, this kid can play. He's awesome. Cade Klubnik, not so much. I remember I think he was one of the big reasons Florida State won up there in 23. He just didn't play well. He didn't handle the moments well. Dabo was throwing him kind of under the bus for changing plays at the line of scrimmage late in games against Miami, and I think he even did it in that Florida State game in overtime. And I don't remember recalling seeing a kid. And did they open with Georgia last year? Was that last year? And Clemson didn't do much offensively there, although you could tell Clemson was talented on the line of scrimmage. I don't recall a kid kind of changing his narrative after so many games. But by the second half of last season, I thought he was one of the best players in the country. How much better did he get? And, I mean, that's the reason I think, the main reason that I think Clemson can contend is if that kid's a special quarterback, and there were times last year he looked like it, that, that's the key to the whole thing. And he turned into a guy, which says a lot about him because I don't think the Clemson fan base was in love with him for a while there for good reason, because like I said, he didn't burst onto the scene immediately. and usually people write kids off after a year or two. So what does it say about him to come back and be that kind of player? And how good can he be? I mean, is he a first-round pick? Like, is he a Heisman contender? How good is this kid?
I remember writing after that Georgia game last year when it was doom and gloom and panic in the streets because that Cade Klubnik and that offense looked an awful lot like Cade Klubnik and the offense did back in 23. Sort of their own worst enemy, rather than putting a team on your back and winning games, you're losing games and everybody's, anyway, but I wrote at the time because there was a lot of internal optimism about Cade going into the season, starting in August of, man, this dude looks different during some of the scrimmages. They were making lots of explosive plays. He was using his legs more wisely, I guess. And so I wrote after that game, sometimes, Corey, you probably feel this too as a sort of a voice that people read and you have to have a take. Well, sometimes your take has to push back on the immediate reaction, in response to the most recent result. And I just said, look, for just this one day, I'm going to write about hey, it might not be the end of the world. And, Bo Nix was the comparison that I sort of came up with. Bo Nix with Oregon against Georgia
trounced
in the bins.
Yeah.
They looked terrible. And I guess that was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
2 years before the Clemson Georgia game last year.
Yeah.
And it was like open season on Bo Nix. What a terrible quarterback. What a dumb decision by Oregon and blah, 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 blah. And I was joining that chorus at that time because I just from watching Nix at Auburn, I thought he was not a good quarterback and was never going to be one. And so I thought that was a pretty good comparison. The point was, hey, a lot of quarterbacks have looked bad against this Georgia defense.
Especially opening the season.
Yeah.
It's horrible to open the season against that defense.
In that environment.
Yes.
Basically a home game. And so I think also, Corey, the Deshaun and Trevor experiences with Clemson fans sort of gave them and probably others on the outside a really false sense of how hard it is for most quarterbacks, even decorated five-star quarterbacks, to come in right away. Like, they created the impression, that's the rule. These five stars just grow on trees. When the reality is, it's really like a coin flip. Even for the five stars, if you look at history, there are as many busts. Well, not busts, but just not guys who haven't panned out as there have been guys, five-star, supposedly can't miss guys who have gone on to do what everybody expected of them. And so Clemson fans started to taste that when DJ Uyunglele, I don't know if it's too soon to mention him for folks down there.
I want to remind everyone that he did win a game for Florida State last year. he got that Cal dub, 14-9, Larry. Don't forget. Everybody remembers the Florida State California game.
Oh, man. Oh, I forgot. But anyway, it started to – and it was kind of cruel because DJ in 2020 as a freshman, in relief of Trevor, when Trevor was out because of COVID, DJ performed magnificently against Boston College and Notre Dame in back-to-back games. It was like, oh, my God.
They got another one. Yeah.
Got another one. They just grow on trees, and it's just this assembly line of elite playmaking quarterbacks who are just ready-made. Well, then starting with in 21 against guess who? Georgia. Georgia's defense, a game DJ and everyone else probably never recovered from. It starts to dawn on people, oh, crap, well, maybe it's not that simple. Maybe we're not the anomaly we thought we were around these parts in Clemson. And then on top of that, Cade, who comes to the rescue with the ACC championship game against North Carolina when DJ couldn't throw a forward pass in 2022, he wasn't as good as you thought he was at the time that Clemson beat North Carolina that night, 39-10. I believe, because in the next game against Tennessee, against a tougher defense, he kind of fell on his face in some key moments in what was a preview of what we saw in 23. But getting back to my point, like, I think it's hard to find many quarterbacks out there who are just instantly really good their first year as a starter. And it's one of the reasons I'm a little skeptical of the Heisman talk about Arch Manning this year, a little. I hope he does well. I mean, I'm pulling for him. What a great kid, great family, just amazing what they've been for the game. But sort of to what Spurrier, I think, said recently, like, so he's that good? Like, he's a ready-made Heisman candidate? And so why didn't he play more last year?
Right.
You know, when Quinn Ewers was struggling. So anyway, I go back to the point, you know, to Dabo, this isn't really a surprise. You know, Dabo has been on board all along the Cade train, even amid a lot of scrutiny a year ago at this time. And what Dabo would say is, hey, man, guys get better. You know, guys develop. You know, Cade's first year, full year as a starter was also Garrett Riley's first year as the OC. Yeah. And so then you add Matt Luke to the mix last year, and then you add, look, some really good playmakers on the outside, and Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore. Well, yeah, the offense starts to look better. And so is he a Heisman candidate? I think so. I think he's capable. I think the ceiling is limitless for him, largely because he is not just a really high level passer, but he's that dual threat, man. He showed last year in some key situations he can run. He can really run, and when he has that comfort and confidence in the system and the situational knowledge, going to his third year as the starter, and you have all the weapons around him who are coming back. I'd be surprised if he's not at the top of that.
Yeah, he's got some dudes. He's got some dudes to throw to. That's for sure. That's always nice. Florida State might have some. Well, I think they do certainly better than they had last year. I think they learned their lesson in the portal, in the sense that don't get guys that might be good. Go get guys that have done it. They went and got a guy, Deuce Robinson from USC, who has 11 or 12 touchdown catches. Squirrel White from Tennessee that had 60 catches a couple years ago. They went and got guys that have at least done it on this level, and you don't have to project. But not to Clemson's. I don't think to Clemson's caliber, at least proven on the field yet. I want to go back to the beginning real quick as we wrap this up, Larry. I think, number one, I wanted to ask you real quick, 20 seconds. What conference will Clemson be in 2030? Ballpark, just first instinct, first reaction, best reaction.
It's going to be 20 seconds of silence as I think about all the possibilities. Gosh, man, you know this is going to create some sort of headline. Clemson
would Clemson fans be okay with the Big Ten?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Florida State fans would too. Florida State fans are still very, very angry at the SEC, obviously, from what happened a year and a half ago, in ESPN. But at the end of the day, as I try to explain to Florida State fans, I know you don't want to help out the SEC. I know if it became the Big Ten and the SEC, a lot of you would be like, yeah, let's go to the Big Ten. Until you're in Minneapolis in November, or you're in West Lafayette any day of the year. That it's not quite the same as having Ole Miss fans come to your stadium, or you getting to go to Ole Miss, or just the proximity of all these games that you could be playing at, except for like Oklahoma. But what I wanted to come back to is right now in the immediate, Larry, Florida State fans want to leave the ACC 5 years ago, but they're here in the ACC. And as it's currently constructed, I'm of the opinion as if Florida State is one of the top 2 teams in the ACC, they're in the playoff. That's an easier path than having to be one of the top 4 teams in the SEC. So in the immediate, just take care of business here and worry about that. It really did hurt that Florida State completely fell on his face, had the worst season in school history as they're thumping their chest about what a big brand they are. But it's not that hard in 1 year to turn it around from 2-10 to being one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the ACC. And I think Clemson fans appreciate that too, like the path to the playoff. That wasn't a great Clemson team last year. It wasn't horrible, obviously. It was good enough. but they made the playoff. It's not that hard in this conference.
It's such a great topic because in the midst of all this arguing about the playoff format starting in 26, 5-11 and the 4-4, 2-2, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so naturally, if you're in the ACC, you're like, well, good grief, that's not fair. All these automatic bids for the Power 2 and whatever. But if you're Dabo Swinney and you're Clemson folks, you're quietly going, okay, we're cool with that, because it's on you.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't finish in the top 2 in the ACC, you don't freaking deserve it. So you have to accomplish. You have to. It's on you, right? You're if you're what you think you are, then you're going to be in. And so, I think that's one of the reasons I think that the idea of being in the ACC for several more years, it's palatable when you combine that with the extra money that is available and the just being in the ballpark of some of these SEC and Big Ten schools. Of course, a lot of this is subject to change because the college athletics model is subject to some massive change moving forward. But the operative and important part is that Clemson and Florida State are in a position to be nimble and to react as they best see fit to whatever changes happen. And so that's what the settlement was so important to both was, and why I considered it a major victory for both schools over the ACC, was it gives you that flexibility to react to whatever changes to the model or changes to the conference structure eventually comes.
Well, Larry, I told you it'd be 20 minutes. We pushed it to 30, but I'm
No
letting
problem.
you out the door now. Thank you so much, buddy. Welcome to the team, by the way.
Yeah, glad to be
that's
a part
awesome.
of it.
That's exciting. And I guess I'll see you in October, and then maybe in Charlotte in December.
Are you? Can I? 20 seconds. Is Florida State going to be in the ACC championship?
Oh, come on, man! Of course, of course, they're going undefeated. Alabama. I'm with Tommy Castellanos, man. Alabama's scared of that kid. Yeah, sure. We'll see, man. After last season, honestly, as you can imagine, I'm not going to try to predict anything ever.
No.
I mean, there's never been a program that did what we went through, Larry.
That's crazy.
From going from 13 to 2, that's unprecedented. It's unprecedented. Yeah. So at this point, we just throw our hands up and enjoy it. So, Larry, thank you so much, buddy.
I'll always enjoy visiting with you, Corey. Thank you.
Alrighty, that's a wrap for today. I kind of have this idea of how the whole week is going to play out, but who knows if that's the way it's going to actually end up playing out. But we should have one more show for you this week, and it's going to be my extended conversation with Charlie Potter over at Bama Online. Bama Online at one point was on the 247 network. They're now at On 3, just like Tiger Illustrated is, just like Warchant.com is. Come home, everybody. We got all the people. We should do something instead of like we've got the meats, like rip off Arby's. Like we've got the, I don't know, somebody could fill in the blank. That would be cool. So yeah, we'll talk Bama on the next show. In the meantime, don't forget Jeff Cameron Show, Warchant.com around the clock. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Larry for hopping on. Thanks for Corey for doing that. Thank y'all for listening. Once again, it's been Wake Up Warchant presented by Vitamin Energy, vitaminenergy.com.